Welcome to Writer's Den. I'm Brenda Patterson. Writer's Den is a program that uncovers and showcases writers and all things literary in Polk County and beyond. Today's program is all about libraries. Joining us in the studio today is Gladys Roberts, who is the coordinator of the Polk County Library Co-Operative, and Tina Peak, who is the city librarian, and she's in charge of the history resources for the city of Lake Wales.
Hi, Brenda.
Hey.
Hi, Brenda. Nice to be here today.
Yes. Yay!
Yes.
I'm so glad that you all could be here with me today.
We're excited.
Oh, excited. I like that. I do. I like that. Well, today I thought we could talk about libraries, which we all three are sort of experts in. Mm-hmm. And then also talk about indie books and how to get indie books into our libraries. What do you think about that?
Sounds good.
Yeah. But before we start about indie books, let's talk to you, Miss Gladys, because you're in charge of the Polk County Library Cooperative. So could you tell us a little bit about the cooperative, how it works?
Absolutely. So public libraries here in Polk County are owned and operated by their cities. As in Tina's case, she's the director of the Lake Wales Public Library, and it's a department or a division of a department. So prior to 1997, if you lived here in one of the cities that had a library, your library services were covered through your taxes. If you lived outside of the city limits, which over 2/3 of our population still do, you didn't have access to a public library. So in 1997, the 13 cities with the public libraries and the Board of County Commissioners signed interlocal agreements among themselves, with the idea being that the county would provide money to the cities to offset the cost of adding services for all the residents of Polk County. So the Polk County Library Cooperative is that entity that was formed through the interlocal agreement, and we enable the outstanding seamless provision of public library services countywide. We see ourselves kind of as the cornerstone of the public library services. So that means that we operate an automation system that you can go online and look at the holdings of all of the libraries in the county. You have one library card that's good at all of the libraries in the county. When you go online and look up materials, if what you want to read is in Lake Wales and you live in Mulberry, you can have it delivered to you in Mulberry, or we even offer a books by mail program where it can be mailed to you at home. Lake Wales Public Library manages that service for us. So those are the types of things that the Library Cooperative does. We enable you to have countywide library service even though the libraries themselves are owned and operated by their cities.
Right. When I first started working at Lakeland Public Library, and I feel now that I'm a fixture there, but when I first started working there, we did have that where you had to pay money if you weren't in the city, and it was not always a good thing when people came up to the desk and they were raring to get a library card, and then somebody said, give me $35. That was a bit difficult. Yes. I'm so happy that we got the county cooperative going.
I think it's the most successful venture. I'm biased, but I think it's the most successful venture that the cities and the county have ever joined into together. It just works beautifully for everybody. This way, all of the residents, even in the unincorporated area, have full access to public library services. The county didn't have to go into the library business and build buildings and hire staff and buy materials. The cities were able to expand on the outstanding programs that they already had. Our cities, many of our cities have had libraries for over 100 years. They have a long history of a strong tradition of good library service. So I think it's the best of all worlds. It seems to work very well for us. Our patrons enjoy the services that are provided. In addition to the books by mail service that Lake Wales contracts with us for, they also operate our bookmobile, which goes out into the unincorporated areas. We have stops throughout the county, regular stops every 2 weeks, and then we're available for special occasions when they let us know in advance. So it works out very well for everybody. We also, I'm really proud of this one too, non-traditional service up at the Outpost 27 Visitor Center, which is right off of I-4 on Highway 27, right up in the north eastern corner of the county. We have 2 vending machines. And your regular library card that you use at your other libraries is good at those vending machines. You can check out adult bestsellers, children's books, and DVDs from the vending machines. We have a book drop up there, so if it's convenient, you can just return them up there and they'll get back to their owning location. The books by mail items can be dropped off there. So we have some traditional library services and some think outside of the box library services as well.
I love that. I really do. That's something I like to make sure that I tell people who run into me in the street. I feel like I'm an evangelist. I tell people, obviously, who come into the libraries where I work and what have you, that their library card affords them so much more now than it did before. Think of it this way. You have your library card and you walk into Bartow Public Library and you see a book and you go, "Ooh, I want that." And so you check it out. This is a great thing. But then you're driving along and you go out of town and you come back in town and you're driving past Lake Wales and you've got that Bartow book in your car and you're like, crud, I'm not gonna make it to Bartow before they close. But here, we're in Lake Wales. So you can take that little turn, go to Lake Wales Public Library, drop off your book, and then the cool part is you can peruse Lake Wales' shelves, pick up something, check it out, and then go back to Lakeland, where you're actually from, and when you finish that book, you turn it into Lakeland, and it all goes back magically where it's supposed to go.
And even more, you can just be at home online.
Thank you.
And you can now take your library card. We have ebooks, we have downloadable audiobooks, we have videos, many, many resources, a lot of really excellent databases that you would normally have to pay to use are provided with your library card through our library website. So it's so much, it's the one little card in your pocket that opens up so many doors and avenues for you to entertainment and education and research.
Oh, definitely. We'll kind of go back to some of the things that you can get access to online in just a few moments. But I want to sort of shift just a small little bit and talk about all of these fantastic things that we have, the books and what have you, and this electronic stuff that's just amazing. But I want to also talk about it from sort of a writing standpoint. Because we have so many fantastic ways to get information out now, you don't have to wait for a book to come to you. If you're a writer, like some of us like to think we're writers, myself that is, you don't have to wait for that. You can write your own book. You can do what they call due diligence and write it, get it edited, get it packaged very nicely, and what have you. And then after that, you're like, I want to get it into the library. So I'm going to shift a little bit and talk to you, Miss Tina, and say, while all of our libraries, I work at Lakeland Public Library also, all of our libraries work together to make sure that you can have access to books, check out things, do fantastic stuff. We all are actually independent.
We are.
Yes.
And as such, one of those professional terms we use sometimes is collection development.
Yes.
And those are standards that we've established, just as there are standards in other industries, on what materials are best suited for our community without any kind of bias or judgment or so forth. We certainly never want to censor, but we do in Lake Wales, I can speak for Lake Wales, part of our collection development policy that we follow does have a component for indie publishing and self-published individuals. A lot of times one of the things I run up against is very enthusiastic authors who've just spent money to have this book published, and they walk in and say, I'd like to put a table up so I can sell my works.
Yes.
And at that point, we kind of have to drop back because even city policy doesn't allow, it doesn't allow the lady who sells any kind of item or man in a home party environment to come set up a table, and it's the same way with, that's just not something we allow. So we try to work with people. If we were talking earlier about the possibility of people who can come and present an idea for a program. If you have have just written a book on how to coach Little League or something, and you've gotten it published or you've paid to have it published, then come to the directors or whoever coordinates programs.
Right.
I know in Lakeland you are that person
Right.
for adult programming.
Right, and I am not the director. I am not the city librarian. I'm actually the fine arts / adult programming librarian.
Right, right.
And each library, it will be a different person who handles it, and they'll have different titles.
Right.
But if you're gonna go into a library and say, hey, I have a book, then your best thing to do is to go in and ask who handles indie books for the library.
Or who handles adult programming. Or,
right.
Yeah. So in that case, it can be me in Lake Wales, but I have other people who do programming.
Yes.
As far as having a book placed in your independent publication, placed in our library, we did set up some kind of standards and so forth. We prefer books by local or area authors, Polk County residents or seasonal residents, or something that has a spin or interest about our county.
Right.
That doesn't mean if you've written a book about, or fishing, I shouldn't say bass fishing, but fishing in the rivers of Illinois, I guess, or something, that we won't accept that. But our preference is that it kind of have a local spin or a local author. We do ask that our professional librarians kind of take a look at it. If it's a children's book, I send it to my youth services librarian, myself, or someone else who does collection development, kind of to do an overview. It's excellent if someone has already had their book reviewed.
Yes.
And I often jokingly say, this doesn't mean your mother and your aunt have reviewed it.
That is very true.
You kind of need to have either someone, if it's a nonfiction work in the field, just that lends a lot of credence to it. We have developed what we call a local author's shelf. So those books in the we have adult and children all together. They are labeled as such. We put a catalog record in so that if you've written a book and you want your friends to know that it's available, they can go in and look under your name or the title, and they can, just as Gladys said, they can place a request on it and we can send it on. We have the local author's shelf for two reasons. One is so that we can track the usage and kind of see how the items are holding up and so forth. And another is so we can showcase those works. We often point people to that collection as a, just so people know that we do accept these items. We don't purchase local authors' materials.
Okay.
We prefer donations.
Right.
But we're not opposed to a writer who might put a book plate in the front of that book saying, if you'd like to purchase my item, go to this whatever online store. But as a rule, unless it's really something that's kick out of the park, has received national acclaim, we will buy that. And the case in point with that is is the books, the trilogy that knocked it out of the park, and she was an indie writer, and that's the Shades of Grey books. Right. We bought several of those. But anyway, we do. That's I'm really proud of that, and we try to keep those books for several years, and we hope that suits folks. And I'm always happy to explain to people the reasoning for it. I would encourage strongly indie writers, if you have questions about your editing ability, well, I think any of us ought to have somebody else reread anything.
Yes.
So, and make comments and grow thick skin, but well-edited books really make a difference.
Right. I think kind of backing up just a little bit, indie books. When we talk about indie books as librarians, we're basically talking about books that are published by publishers that are not the big box publishers like Random House and I don't know,
Doubleday.
Not Knopf or
Yeah.
Knopf, right. Generally, indie books are books that have been published by small presses, independent presses, and they can be mom and pop presses. There's nothing wrong with that. And also indie published books or indie books are books that are published by you, the writer. That's all considered indie publication. One of the things that we do, and I'm going to look over to you all just a little bit for your take on it, but one of the things that we do when we do our collection development, when we're choosing the books that we want to purchase for the library, is that we look at reviews. We look to see if they've won awards. We pay attention to who the author is.
Very
Is that
much
person an expert in that field? And when we talk about reviews, we're also saying we're having someone that's separate from their mom, their father, separate from their best friend around the corner.
Yes.
Someone in the industry who has looked at this writer's work and says, yes, he or she knows what they're doing, what they're talking about, because we have this sort of responsibility.
We certainly do.
From our community to make sure that we're spending the money wisely.
Definitely.
Right.
Exactly.
And so that's one of the reasons why we are very particular, I guess you could say.
We have to be selective.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we have to make sure that it has good standards,
Good
right?
standards.
Like when you open up a book, the words are spelled at least mostly correct.
Correctly.
Mostly correct, because
Exactly.
everybody makes a mistake.
Exactly.
But just to make sure things are standard.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think libraries have a long history of that. We were talking before we came on the air about a publisher called Pineapple Press. It's been around for a long time. It's a small publisher. They publish primarily Florida-related materials. And I remember back in the 80s purchasing from Pineapple Press because they had an established reputation. They were frequently authors that we would not have known about otherwise.
Exactly. Yeah.
But some of our best materials, particularly in our Florida collections, come from Pineapple Press.
They're located in Sarasota, still in a family-owned business.
Right.
But they've introduced us to such authors as Patrick Smith, who published A Land Remembered from Pineapple Press. Anybody from Florida probably recognizes that title. A local author from Gainesville, Janice Owens, who has is one of a friend. I consider her a friend, but a magnificent writer.
Definitely.
And as we were speaking earlier, Pineapple Press and other what you would call smaller press, they release fewer lists, a shorter list each year. But many times you can go to their website and the criteria for what they're accepting to be considered and how to submit a manuscript is right there.
Right.
So, you know, if you feel like, Janice actually told me one time that she kept the manuscript of her first book, which was My Brother Michael, locked in a foot locker for several years because she didn't have the confidence she felt to send it on, and she took a chance and sent it over to Pineapple Press, and the rest is history. So
yes, it is. I really like her writing.
Oh, I love her writing.
She's really
magnificent.
Good.
Yeah.
That's what I like about small presses, is that they do give people who maybe are a little too new to try other larger press a chance, and they're sort of within reach. Because Pineapple Press is right here in Florida.
Sure.
She's a Florida author, and it's certainly easier to say, I'm going to send my manuscript just up the road a piece, rather than I'm going to send my manuscript to Chicago, New York, or wherever, you know.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
Right. Another thing I sort of want to introduce is the idea of formats, because I know what you were talking about just then was mostly print.
Yes.
Print. Lots of times these days it's certainly a lot easier and a lot cheaper to publish a book if you're an independent author, to publish a book in ebooks.
Ebook format.
Now, I know at our library, it can sometimes make it a little difficult to decide, yes, we want to add that person's work if they've done it through ebooks.
Right.
Do you all have a way?
Well, I will go back to our professional journals that we utilize,
Right.
our review journals. To be very honest with you, I have asked my staff every week when People magazine comes in to turn to the top picks section and photocopy the book page, the books that are highlighted, and we need to get those because it makes
That's
sense.
popular, right.
Yeah, that it'll be popular works. But for ebook content, yes, I rely Library Journal, which is a magazine that helps librarians make selections, now has a section on indie books.
Oh, good.
And they have a section on independently published ebooks.
Yes.
So they have culled through. It makes the work for us a lot easier.
Right.
We can select a book is kind of timely now. A CPA who's written a book on how to do your taxes with the new tax law.
Right.
Maybe a big publisher didn't pick that up.
Right.
But maybe that person did it in PDF format and they felt like it was worth having. So I rely heavily on those review journals because they're defendable too. That allows you to,
that is true.
to be able to say, this is the reason I've spent the money on the collection that I have.
Right. And that's always a cool thing, that things are put together nicely, packaged nicely for us. Because, as librarians, how much time do we have?
Not nearly as much as we need for any task at hand.
Right. And I know that's part of the reason why we read reviews and what have you, because believe it or not, authors, we librarians, we're on your side. Whether you're a big author and you have people going, ooh, we're not worthy to be in the room with you, or if you're a small writer and what have you, we librarians are on your side. But we only have this much time. And so we use the reviews as sort of shortcuts because we can't read every book. And as you said before, Tina, a kind of defensible thing, at some point there will be someone who will come into our shelves and go, oh, you have this book? Why do you have this book on the shelf? And then we have to sort of defend. And we want to defend the authors. We want to be able to say, we have this author on our shelves because they're fantastic, because they're
well
experts.
Reviewed. Right.
They're well reviewed.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things that we do, is we use reviews in order to choose the right thing and to give our audience, our patrons, what they want, what they need.
Exactly.
And introduce them to new people local from our area.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's the part that's really exciting for us, is to introduce the public to new writers. And one other way, just before we go, if you're an independent author and you're wanting to figure out how to get your work into the library, and somehow or another you don't have reviews, well, that would be great. But there's other ways to at least get the word out that you've written a book. You can approach us librarians and say, well, I've written this new book, but I also have this program where I'm going to talk about this and that and all the things that you're expert in. And we librarians love programs. We really do, because we want to give our audience, our patrons, information. And so if you can come to us with a good program and show us your book, you're in like Flynn. So, I thank you too.
Thank you. Can I mention our Gale courses?
Oh
real quick?
gosh, yes.
Okay, just a tool for writers. On the Lake Wales Public Library's website, this is one of those databases we buy that people can take advantage of. We have a product or a database called Gale Courses, and it's spelled like the strong wind, G-A-L-E.
Right.
It is free. It is online instruction led by an instructor. There are over 300 courses on there, and 23 of which are writing classes. Specifically writing classes. There's classes on how to write for magazines, there's classes on how to write mysteries, young adult works, and all you need is a library card. And these are the same classes that are being taught in community colleges for adult continuing education, not for college credit, but for adult CEUs, and that people are paying for. We're offering these free. And they are 6 weeks, 2 lessons a week. If you get into week 2 and you think this isn't for me, or I don't have the time, no harm, no foul, you can come back around and sign up for them again.
Yes.
A new set of 6 weeks classes open up every second Wednesday of the month. Right. So I would encourage you to go to our website, which is lakewalesfl.gov/library, and our Gale courses are under a tab called Books, eBooks, or More.
Right.
So, and for teens, we've just started a new zine club.
Yes.
A zine club is short for magazine, which is exactly what they're doing, is short published magazines, and they are meeting the first Thursday of every month from 4 to 5 p.m. and we've got a Lake Wales High School student named Lily who's going to facilitate them for us.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
This is great. See, this is what you find at libraries. We have everything. We really do. Thank you so much for coming
Brenda.
on.
Been our pleasure.
Been a pleasure.
Oh, wow.
great.
You've made this inaugural thing just fantastic for me. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming and paying attention to us here at Writer's Den.